Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
Thanks for coming back to Talking Books and Stuff's podcast. We have a return guest today, Sam Wiebe from out on the West Coast, one of the premier crime writers, noir writers in Canada. Sam, thanks for coming back with us again today.
Thanks for having me, Dennis.
Now, we're talking about Ocean Drive. It's set in White Rock. I grew up in Crescent Beach and White Rock, so immediately I was intrigued by this premise. So why did you select White Rock as a locale? Any specific reasons?
Well, like you, I have a connection to it. My mom still lives there, and I visit regularly, and it just seemed like a very interesting place to set a crime novel. A little bit different than Vancouver. It's a small town, but it's right on the border, and you have these tourist elements, and then this sort of transnational going on around it. So I thought that was kind of a cool dichotomy, like very small, very pleasant and touristy, and yet a lot of dark stuff going on also.
And so what happens is we got a guy who is convicted of murder. He goes to prison, gets out. Now, I take it the prison would have been like the Mission one, is that right?
Yeah, Kent Prison.
Okay. No, do you mention, I can't remember if you mentioned that specifically.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got the guy, he gets out of jail and he decides to put his life back together somehow, but he's on parole and he's doing a bunch of these jobs. And apparently you did all the jobs that the Cameron Shaw did in the book.
Yeah, anything non-criminal, I did. I worked in a warehouse. I did convention setup. Worked in a liquor store. Worked in a restaurant. I mean, just anything. And I was very lucky. Like I was a real tourist in that world. Like I worked night shifts and did laboring stuff, but I had a way out. Like I was going to go back to college, and so I wasn't there permanently. But I saw a lot of people who were, and who were kind of, rebuilding their lives, and that was like the reality for them. And there wasn't a ton of like overt criminal activity, but there's definitely a lot of desperation, and that's sort of what I wanted to capture with that.
And so what we have in Ocean Drive, written by Sam Wiebe, it's out now, and get it along with everything else he's written because I highly recommend him. So we've got a cop and a crook, because what happens is Cameron gets involved in a bunch of stuff that perhaps he shouldn't get involved in, and at the same time there's an arson investigation going on with an RCMP officer based in White Rock. So a cop and a crook, why this combination?
Well, I mean, it's the classic, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, all the way up to Sherlock Holmes and Moriarty. I mean, it's just this great idea of looking at a crime from both sides. Like Cam is someone who knows the perpetrators and he's working in this world. And for Megan Quick, the RCMP staff sergeant who's investigating, it's almost something that she's uncovering, that all of this is kind of going on in her town, right under her eyes. So as she's doing the investigating, Cam comes under suspicion because of his previous criminal activity in his history, and they kind of end up on a collision course.
Now, is that something, how can I put this, just because a guy did something wrong once, should he all be forever tarred with that brush?
No, unless it's my brother, in which case he's tarred forever with that brush.
Oh, gotcha. But it's immediately somebody's suspicious or looked upon with suspicious because of something they did in the past, but they might have come back and recovered and all of that, but they're still, like you say, kind of covered by that brush. So again, White Rock, what kind of research did you do in this book, not only for White Rock, like you say, you've visited there many a time, about the kind of what happens in the story is there kind of gets to be some cross-border interaction. So how did you stumble across that kind of connection?
Well, I talked to a lot of cops and a lot of people in the that kind of world, and did a lot of reading on the subject. There's a lot of great local reporting in Vancouver and the Metro Vancouver area. There's a reporter named Kim Boland who does fantastic work around the ports and organized crime. And then with White Rock, it was unfortunately just living there for several years as a teen and kind of just seeing that there are like a lot of good people and a lot of people with money, and then their kids would just kind of get into weird stuff, and it would maybe be covered up, and so there's a little bit of personal stuff and a little bit of research. It's very fascinating.
It's very fascinating. One quick question: do you have an air fryer?
An air fryer? Yes, we have the Instant Pot attachment.
Oh, so an Instapot. I was trying to think of those because we just got an air fryer a couple of weeks ago, and my wife is looking at it, and now she says, I'm afraid to use it. So I don't know why that came up. I just wanted to ask you about an air fryer. You've got lots of books, Sam Wiebe, over the years. Have you noticed your writing style has changed somewhat over the years? Your style, your tone, things like that?
I mean, I hope it's getting better, but I think Ocean Drive is a little bit different. I mean, it's a multi-character book, different points of view, and it's a little bit starker and a little bit nastier. With the Wakeland series, like Sunset and Jericho, you're writing from one character's point of view, and it's really in that like Raymond Chandler vein. So you get more of the one character's personality, but it also stays very static. Like I can't really kill off Wakeland at the end of the book or change his life too much. But with Ocean Drive, you really don't know what's going to happen with the characters right up until the end, which is, that was a lot of fun.
That's right. And so I think I read something earlier about that you like that in the sense of it gives you something different to write about. There's more challenges, and you can go any way you want with the story. Is that kind of what drew you to this sort of one-off type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I really love the private detective genre, and I hope to keep writing those. But I felt like this was the correct way to tell this story. And, I didn't realize until I was finished, but one of the models I had unconsciously was the movie Fargo, like the Coen Brothers film, where it's the story told from both the cops and the criminals' points of view and how they interact. And it's not necessarily like there's not a huge gulf, or the gulf between them is smaller than either would find comfortable.
So Fargo, that must have been one of your favorite movies, obviously.
It's my wife's, I think, second favorite movie. She has a big poster on the wall. Yeah, I would love it.
Okay. What is her first favorite movie?
Todd Browning's Freaks.
Oh my gosh.
Which is...
Oh my gosh. Yes, I know that one. And I'm thinking of, at the same time as Fargo, when you talk about somebody who gets drawn into something and they can't control it, the one with William Hurt, and it's in Florida, and he gets drawn into trying to
Body Heat.
Body Heat, yes, another one like that. Yes, so that was another one that where I'm not saying that happens in Ocean Drive, but sometimes people get drawn into things, and then once they're in it, they can't control themselves. Did you kind of find that when you were writing it, that you got the guy doing stuff, and then it just kind of snowballed after that?
Yeah, I mean, Cam isn't an inherently, evil character. And at the beginning, especially, he really doesn't want to have anything to do with this. He doesn't want to end up back in prison. He just wants to find a decent job and kind of pick up where he left off. I mean, he's in his 20s, so he's, he lost a real chunk of his life. But what happens is, he's kind of, as you said, tarred with that crime. So anytime he goes to apply for a job or a house, that's something he has to reckon with. And even the best intentioned person, when they're just beaten down repeatedly, they're going to start looking at the opportunities that they have available to them. And he's fighting that for a lot of the book.
And what happens is we've got our character Cam. He gets drawn into by one way or another tied up with I'll call it a biker gang, and he goes from there. So, do you have any sort of inside knowledge about these biker gangs, the vandals and people like that?
No, in my spare time, I'm not a sergeant of arms of the Popeyes or anything like that.
Good.
No, it's just part of West Coast organized crime. Vancouver crime tends to be very multicultural, and in the case of the bikers, like, they got up from California very early, and it was a very bloodless takeover. So they don't tend to be involved in a lot of street level stuff. So what Cam's involved in is the sort of right off the ports and into the dealing.
I kind of imagine that a lot of those guys, the big burly guys that you kind of imagine with their Harleys and everything, are longshore workers, and one thing would lead to another, and I'm sure it's easy to, well, not easy, but to nab a container or break into it or smuggle something in and out, because there's hundreds and hundreds of containers coming and going every day in a port like Vancouver. Is that kind of what you're finding out as well?
Yeah, I mean, the epigraph, or one of the epigraphs from the book, was based on a study that was done of the ports and in Delta and Metro Vancouver, and it said that there was, I think the actual words used were, there was literally no downside to organized crime infiltrating the ports. Like, there's no port police, you're not going to be searched that rigorously, so have at it. And that was a real eye-opener.
It seems that way. We're not very, up in Canada, very stringent on keeping security, especially at ports of entry such as Vancouver, or even the border right there at Peace Arch. It seems like, like you say, there's thousands upon thousands of people come and go every day through that White Rock Blaine area. So, security was probably not what it should be, in my mind.
Yeah, it seems pretty porous right now, but so much of that is like funding and what they can, what the law allows them to do. I mean, it's a massive problem.
So we've got Cam Shaw and small town Staff Sergeant Megan Quick involved in this situation in White Rock. And you mentioned also that there seems to be sort of I know a lot of people from White Rock, and they're pretty well off, but you find that there's also sort of a area of people in White Rock that aren't that well off. Is that what you're finding?
Well, yeah. I mean, we were pretty lower middle class when I was growing up, and we lived in South Surrey, and there's a huge gulf between, one side of 16th Avenue or North Bluff Road and the other. And it, I think it has grown, and as the city's gotten, larger and more people are, there's more development. A lot of those service jobs are people coming into White Rock. Like, they can't even afford to live in the city, so they're busing in from, Langley, Poco, all over the area, and that creates kind of an interesting clash too. Like, who gets to live here, and what's sort of going on that people don't really notice.
Yeah, I know, and it's kind of hard for people to imagine. Well, especially back here in the prairies, where things are wide open and you can still buy a house for under $200,000, especially in our small town if you want to move here from the West Coast. So it's
Oh, very tempting. Very tempting.
I mean, you could cash in and have a big wad of cash in your bank account or your tax-free savings account and still have a fancy house with 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, full basement, full garage, all that kind of stuff, 45 minutes away from a big city. So, which you can get
Wow.
to in 45 minutes. You don't get stuck in traffic. Traffic in White Rock is crazy. You've been out there lately? It's nuts.
Oh, it's horrible.
I mean, it's worse than Vancouver because you're trying to get from the border to a shopping center takes 25 minutes. Oh well, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about Cam and Megan. Do you see a future for those two?
Like together? I don't
Or in
think
a book?
romantically, no.
No, not them romantically, but
I don't know. The response to the book has been really gratifying. I always intended it as a one-off, but if the idea comes along, I might bring them back. I mean, there's more to say, I think.
now while we're talking to Sam Wiebe about Ocean Drive, I also understand that you're have a different name, Nolan Chase. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's Nolan Chase is a pen name, and I've written the first book in a new series featuring a small town chief of police named Ethan Brand in Washington State.
Yes.
So the first those books just came out last month.
Wow, and they haven't sent me a copy yet because, like, when I wasn't in White Rock, I lived in Bellingham for almost 20 years and drove up to Vancouver almost every day for 4 years working in radio. So went through Blaine and then was in radio in Bellingham and Blaine and Mount Vernon, Washington. So there's another big connection there that we can talk about. And yes, Blaine,
Yeah.
Blaine, a small town, like does have its own police department. Ferndale has a police department. Linden has a police department. Everson has a police department. So they don't have the RCMP like we do. They have individual police departments. So is Nolan Chase. Nolan Chase is the police chief there going to be, you hope, an ongoing character?
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of a neat. It's a neat way for me to write a different kind of mystery protagonist. Like the Wakewood novels are very, like I said, they're very in that Raymond Chandler vein. So, they tend to be quite realistic. And Wakewood is not. He's not heroic, other than he just tries to get to the bottom of things. Whereas Ethan Brand is more like. It's the kind of character Clint Eastwood might have played in the 70s. Like, just kind of a laconic,
Right.
comfortable with violence, pretty tough, but also warm-hearted. And it's just really fun to write.
When you were growing up, speaking of Raymond Chandler and people like that, did you have favorite genres that you'd like to read?
Yeah, it was almost all crime and mystery fiction. I mean, I loved... Sue Grafton and Walter Mosley, like all the 90s private eye writers were just great. Like Lawrence Block, Robert B. Parker, obviously. But I read everything, like, classics, and westerns, and historical novels. But yeah, it was mostly crime fiction.
And not everybody, most people I've talked to who are writers say that to be a writer, you have to be a reader. I guess you're finding that true as well.
Yeah, it's very difficult to write something in a genre that you're not an expert in. Like, just from spending, like I've been working on a horror novel in my spare time, and it's not the most comfortable genre for me. Like, I like the story, and I like, there's writers I love in that world. I mean, Stephen King, obviously, Anne River Simmons. I mean, there's great horror fiction out there. But I don't have the same affinity that I do for crime fiction. Like, I wouldn't set out to read a crap horror novel. Whereas there are definitely times when you're out on the porch and you're just like, yeah, I'll read a a B minus C plus private eye novel. If it has a cool cover, sure, I'll give that a try.
Sort of like the hard case crime books that are available.
Yeah, those are great.
Yeah.
Some of them are just wonderful.
I read one years ago by A.A. Milne, and it was just, it could have been, again, a Coen Brothers movie, and it was for early 50s. It was fairly hip and with it, and almost graphic, and the story just whipped right along, and it wasn't it was a one-off as well. I digress. I'm sorry, Sam, I'm having a strange day today. Speaking of movies, what's your favorite movie? Or movies?
My favorite movie of all time? Oh, God. It would it would probably be The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I mean, I just love that era of Western. I recently saw Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid again, like the Peckinpah movie, and
right.
I mean, it's another just fantastic film. So yeah, like Westerns, crime films. LA Confidential was one of the best films I've ever seen in the theater. I mean, that was just absolutely visceral, and the audience was just shocked when the killer was revealed. I mean, that really stands out to me.
Yeah, I like Chinatown. I've watched that, I don't know, maybe a half a dozen times, and each time I find something different that I didn't recognize before. And it's such a well-crafted movie that I just keep going back to it over and over. Right from the opening, sort of that low trumpet that's wailing a bit in the background, that draws me right in. So how do you...
It's an amazing film.
Amazing film. Sam Wiebe, you've got all these books. How do you decide when you sit down each day which one you're going to work on?
Money. Every book is just this... I like to write it on spec. Like, I like to just start and see what it turns out as before I send it into my agent. But I have a couple of series going, and I kind of rotate through those. And I also write short fiction and, articles and things like that. But, mostly it's what I'm passionate about and what kind of story I feel like telling and what kind of story I can tell. So I try to kind of alternate between things that are really comfortable. Like, I love the private eye genre so much that I would write Waco novels for the rest of my life happily. But if I can get to stretch my muscles a little bit and do like a horror novel or do like a multi-character crime saga like Ocean Drive, that's a lot of fun too. And it takes more work, but it's also really rewarding.
And over the years, has your writing schedule changed, or you always been like a put your butt in the chair and get to it kind of guy?
Yeah, when I was like in college and just out of college, I used to write at night, and then during the day, and if I was working, and I'd fit it around that. And now I try to just write in the morning and up through the afternoon. So the second my wife goes to work, and the cat's fed and the coffee's made, I just start and don't stop until it's time for lunch and a walk and business stuff.
So you're sort of a kept man.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way of putting it.
No, just kidding. Anyway, Sam Wiebe is here. We've been talking about Ocean Drive plus all his other works and various influences over the years. Sam Wiebe, the book is Ocean Drive. I recommend it highly, and I hope to talk to you again sometime. And again, I'm going to thank you for putting up with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Dennis. This was great.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.